been in your position for a year.
Yes.
How are you feeling?
Excited. I think we've got some great momentum going, and I'm excited for the next year.
Awesome. So I want to know how you're doing, the person behind the chief, the person behind the big job title. How are you doing as a person?
You know, I'm doing really well. I fall back on my family and this community and my faith, and you know, I'm doing well. I'm actually rereading for the 7th time one of my favorite books, Quiet Strength by Tony Dungy. So it reconnects you with leadership and faith and how those two work together.
Awesome. You're a man of faith.
I am a man of faith.
Okay. What do you do when you're trying to relax from this stressful job?
Relaxing is watching my kids play, or playing with my grandkids, or just having a conversation with somebody that has nothing to do with politics or government, or you know, just watching my beloved Steelers play.
Go Browns! So, you know, this was a big year for you. And you started in your position December 14th. What would you say is your greatest accomplishment this year as chief?
That's a good question. I don't think I've accomplished anything, because you can't accomplish something by yourself. It's the 500 men and women here who are working day in and day out to try to get to the vision that I've set, to try to make us a problem-solving organization with an emphasis on customer service.
Okay. If anything, what are you and your team striving to do better with for 2018?
2018, we are looking to connect with the community even more. We're taking a wellness approach to things. I think that there's a lot of issues out there, whether it's with kids, whether it's the community, and internally we've looked at some things and we've talked about toxic stress and cumulative trauma. And the reality is, I don't think that we have done a good job of taking care of our employees the way that we should. So we went out and got a wellness grant to look at people, the total person. So we're looking at employees, all employees, from nutrition to health to medical to psychological, emotional, and spiritual. Because the reality is if people aren't feeling well, if we're not taking care of them, how can I expect them to go out and take care of you?
And that you're talking about your team, your officers.
Correct.
Okay. What's your biggest passion? What do you care about the most in this community, in this job of yours? What responsibility do you hold dear to your heart?
What I hold dear to my heart is the children of this community and watching them grow. Watching them grow up to go after their dreams. Because we provide public safety so people can go out and pursue their dreams. So over the last year, I've probably talked to over 3,000 students. I have a great relationship with the superintendent at the high school district, and he allows me to go in, and they'll bring freshmen and sophomores into a gym of 200-300 kids, and we'll talk about leadership and qualities and community service. And the best part is they get to ask me anything. I'm an open book, and some of those questions are a little tough to handle, but I will I'll be completely honest with them and talk about how I'm committed to their future.
That's important, to see, and you're from here to give back to the people that are growing up in this community right now, right?
Absolutely.
So if you could sum this whole year up in one word, just one word, what would you say?
Incredible.
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 Why? Why did you pick that word?
Well, again, we talked about a lot of the positives and things that have happened, but there's also the reality that at one point I had 3 officers all off, whether in hospitals or not, all from violent acts of gunfire at the same time. And that hasn't happened in my 30-year career here. We've, as an organization, we've suffered our own losses with the loss of Sergeant Moore. So I watch the resiliency of the people who work here. We continue to go out and provide great service, even though we as a family, as an organization, are hurting. And then I see the positives that are happening when, you know, we have community members who show up at community meetings and sing our praises when someone else is telling you you're doing a great job. So, I mean, it's just been incredible for us to go through those emotions. Had over 60 promotions within the organization in the past year, which means about 200 people have new opportunities to grow within the organization and to provide better service.
Are you hiring here in Bakersfield? Is that people coming in from Bakersfield that you're giving opportunities to?
We'll recruit statewide, but a lot of the folks that end up coming to work here are homegrown.
Okay. So I know that one of your passions are children, and I want to just shift the conversation just a little bit because of something that rocked the community to its core is the murder of 5-year-old Gaytan. And when you gave that interview the first night that it happened, I think everyone in this room and everyone in the community could see the hurt and the pain and the emotion in your face. I know that you're a father and you probably have, you know, little nephews and kids, and you talk to so many kids in the community. What was going through your head at that moment? What was your thoughts? How do you still feel about that?
I'm still at a loss for words, I think. You know, I understand gangs, gang violence, and growing up in a community where where that is a part of the community. But there were some things that in the past were just off limits. And that homicide told me that we have reached a low point that I refuse for us to go. And I felt it was important to reach out to this community and tell them that that's not going to be tolerated. Any type of violence shouldn't be tolerated, but if you're sitting at home on your hands or you're watching television or reading the newspaper, and if that doesn't motivate you to do something, then you need to do some self-reflection. So those were the things that were going through my mind at the time, and that, you know, what do I tell this mother and this grandmother and this 7-year-old brother? How do I explain that to them? Because that's my role as the police chief, is to explain why things happen. And I didn't have an explanation. And I just couldn't live with that.
In all your years in law enforcement, have you ever seen something like that?
I was a homicide detective for several years, so I have seen those types of things where kids have been the victims of crime, but the blatantness of that type of just disregard for the public whatsoever, that was a first for me.
That murder was the catalyst, and I've spoken with your officer, that murder was the catalyst for this 10-month investigation and the gang sweep that you just did last Tuesday. Is that going to be the norm in how BPD handles gangs and gang violence?
Well, you have to understand, when you're dealing with any type of crime or criminals, but specifically gangs, when you arrest one, you educate 10. So when you talk about technology and techniques and those types of things, we are always behind the curve. So every time we arrest somebody, they change the way they operate, and it takes us time to catch up. So we are going to take a intelligence-led policing model where we're going to use every piece of technology, speaking with the community, being in the community, having our eyes and ears open at all times, and utilize all of those things in an effort to combat gang violence.
This interagency sweep, do you feel like you were sending a message? Because I watched your press conference, I wasn't there, but I saw when you said, you know, what better way to send a message than to stand on your block, you know, stand on the West Side Crips, their territory. Mm-hmm. Do you still stand by that statement that you made? You know, you were sending a direct message to them, listen up?
The message is to anyone who wants to commit violence in the city of Bakersfield. The people who live here, the people who visit here, and the people who work here deserve to come and go safely. And I am committed to that. I'm also committed to, I am the king of second chances. If you want to change your ways and you are willing to change your heart, I've told, call me. We have plenty of resources and plenty of people out there who want to help you. But if you want to continue down this road, I think the message is clear where I stand and where we as an organization stand and what we'll do.
Does BPD have a map of all of the gang territories? Are
We
you
do.
guys looking at it and investigating it?
We're constantly looking at investigating gang territories, gang trends. We work great with the Kern County Probation, Kern County Sheriff's Office, and other state and federal agencies, so that is constantly happening. So this one, I think there was some criticism, what took you so long? Well, it wasn't that it took us long. We've been doing this for years, and people were going to jail even while this investigation was going on. So it's not like we were sitting on our hands doing nothing.
People were going to jail that may have been tied to the Gaytan murder?
No, they were tied to gangs and gang violence.
Okay. And then I read in the indictment that there's about 100 West Side Crips gang members living in Bakersfield. Do you know how many more are still living here? Was that an accurate number, or are they going to be arrested, or are you?
When you're looking at numbers with gang members, it's kind of fluid, because you have to actually have been arrested, been convicted, and actually registered as a gang member. So there's plenty of other gang members out there who don't meet that criteria. So when you give that number, those are the ones that we can actually document and say these are gang members. You have to be very specific. The law is very clear and specific about when you can call someone a gang member. So it's always a little difficult to give you exact numbers on gang members.
What are the biggest problems BPD has with gangs? Is it drugs? Is it violence?
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, because with the drugs comes the violence, and now they're involved in other things. I mean, there were people who just could not believe that $700,000 scam. If you read the indictment that went down, I mean, they're preying on the elderly. They're involved in real estate fraud. They are involved in everything. So we only see that small piece of the violence, or the public only sees that small piece of the violence, and they assume that it's just drugs, but they are involved in lots of criminal enterprises and things that we're investigating.
In court documents that we just recently read, BPD believes that they identified who the possible 3 blind mice are. Is that true? Would that be safe to say in the court documents?
Yes.
Okay. And were those considered the people of interest in the Gaytan murder?
Yes.
And this investigation was launched because of Gaytan, correct?
Yes and no. The idea was there. I already had the idea of how we were going to move forward and partner, but the Gaytan murder actually got some other folks motivated, so it made it a little easier for me to reach out to other resources and get the ball rolling.
Now, the 3 men that were arrested, Knight, King, and Billings, they weren't charged for Gaytan's murder, so yet, or maybe possibly. So I want to know what's the timeline of them being officially charged, or will they be officially charged?
The investigators are working on that. They're working with the DA's office. I don't know how many interviews I've done, but I'm very specific about what information they share with me, because I don't want to give away any investigative techniques. So I'm not briefed up on that, because if somebody asks me, I'll answer it like I just answered your question. So I'm not sure, and that's by design. I don't want to know that. I want to know, hey, we have a warrant and we're ready to go, and that's when I'm brought in and briefed up on that. So I'm not briefed completely on the investigation.
Okay. One of the main key people in the indictment that I read was Augustus AJ Crawford, the man that was killed in the officer-involved shooting. Do you know when the autopsy report will be ready on AJ?
I specifically don't have any information on that because of the officer who was involved in the shooting. So I had to recuse myself from that. So I don't know anything about that investigation whatsoever.
Okay. And you cannot answer any questions regarding that?
That's correct.
Okay. What else would you like the community to know about what you're doing and what your team is doing in 2018?
2018, we are committed to working with our youth. We are committed to providing quality service and treating people with dignity and respect. And we're committed to keeping people safe within our community to the best of our abilities.
Anything else you want the community to know?
Happy holidays. Hopefully some folks in the west side kids can go out and ride their bicycles, and parents and grandparents can feel a little safer during this holiday season.
One more question before we go. I just thought about it. Why was the focus so much on West Side Crips instead of, because there's East Side, right, too? And
That's
other
correct.
Gangs here. Why was the focus just on West Side?
The location of the Gaytan murder, our suspicions about who was involved with that. So I guess another message to the community is they were first, they weren't last.
Do you feel like am I switching just so that he's still looking the same way?
Sure.
You can just stop the live stream when you get a chance.
Oh, okay.